things that I want to talk about some things that, I didn't learn really until several games into my first season as just an underlevel umpire. And some of these things that I'm going to point out are things that it took me a couple of years, maybe 3 seasons before I really knew what I was supposed to do. Some basic things that those of you who are veterans, you've been doing it for 15, 20 years, but when you're in your first, second, third year, you just didn't know you were supposed to do this. So I'm going to do some of that, and then I want to talk about the strike zone. And I was invited to write an article about from in Referee magazine on how umpires see the strike zone. I was an English teacher, and I got in contact with Referee magazine, and I interviewed Alan, in fact, for the article. You'll see him, and I think it's the March issue, or maybe it's the April issue. I think it's the April issue, Alan. And it was a lot of fun. I got to interview major league umpires, college umpires, high school umpires, and so we're going to talk about that a little bit. And in fact, I'd like you guys to also contribute to that part, if you would. So when we get to that part, please unmute and say, call me Al. Also, just say, "Hey Al, let me say something," or something like that. Okay? All right, so now I can't see everybody on my screen, but could you uh, put a hand up if you know how to do that, if you're brand new, like first year, second year, or I think you can do an icon. Okay. All right, so I'm going to share my screen, and then we're going to talk about some of these things that sometimes new umpires don't know. Have to close off a few things here. Okay, so first of all, here's something that not everybody knows how to do exactly. This is, let's see if we can see it, the email that you might send your partner if you're going to do a varsity game. This is like the series of emails. And again, not everybody, I didn't know exactly how I was going to contact my partner when I first had a varsity game. I didn't know how it went. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to get an email from your assigner that says, you're going to be at Belvedere High School on Wednesday. And then it's going to say, this is an email that you'll get. And it's going to say who your partner is. And you'll also have his or her uh, text address or the phone number. So then one of you has to decide to contact the other, usually the day before, maybe 2 days before. And you would write something like this. Hey, Jim, we're scheduled to work at Wheeling High School on Thursday. Would you like to plate our bases? Some guys will say a little bit more than that or something else, but generally that's the idea. And then you're going to get a text back. Hey, Al, I'll take the plate. Our black shirt's good for you. I'll be there at 4 o'clock. So you get something like that. Sometimes a guy will say, well, I drive a red Honda or something like that. And I thought this was really helpful when a guy helped me with this. If you look down here, here's Wheeling High School, and this is where the guy's going to park. So you can park next to each other. Does anybody else have anything you wanted to add to that opening email or text, I mean, to each other or questions? Nope, look good. Okay. So that'll happen a couple of days before. And you'll establish whether, what shirts you're going to wear. Everybody has to have black, of course. and maybe another guy will have a light blue. And if you have a light blue and if you want to wear that, then of course, you could decide to do that. Okay, so then day of the game, you get there and you park. And of course, you're going to have your pregame meeting. Now, Alan, I'm not going to go through what you might do in a pregame meeting. I think maybe you'll do that later on in this in the year or before we get to the beginning of the season.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, what you might talk about. So you'll hear about that later. But you get to the ballpark, and now the question is, well, when do you go onto the field? Now, if you're by yourself or with a partner, typically you want to get near the field, walk over there up maybe 10 minutes before, but really once you walk onto the field, you're going to go right to the pregame meeting. And one thing that I think is important, and again, anybody else can chime in on this a little bit. You don't want to get too chummy with anybody, like a fan or the other, the coach whose dugout you're going to go into possibly to get to the field. You just want to get right to that pregame meeting and avoid anything that looks like you might favor one side or the other. So stay outside of the field until generally the visiting team is just finishing their warm-ups. Okay. Anyone have any ideas you want to chime in about that? Timing? Any thoughts?
Yeah, just don't get down there early, so early that you're in the way or you're gonna be forced to talk to somebody. So
Right.
when
Yeah.
I would say the one like when a team shows up late, right? Like don't I always go up there when they start their warm-ups, right? Or they start, they get into their warm-ups and then you start walking through the field. So you're walking up as they're finishing up and then you can get right into it. So
Yep.
don't just because it's 4:30 doesn't mean we're gonna go right away. Sometimes, unfortunately, but just don't go.
Right.
That's usually my trigger is the visiting team is doing warm-ups. Then by the time we get up there, they're about done and we can go.
Right. Yep. Now, one thing I did fail to mention when you get to the parking lot, say you get there a half hour ahead of the game or 45 minutes, you might want to go up to the field, let the head coach, or the AD, because the AD might be there, or an AD's representative, and just let them know that you're there. And occasionally you'll get some information that's important, like they might say, oh, a team's coming all the way from Lake Forest. They're not going to get here until game time or maybe 20 minutes late, and they're not going to take warm-ups, and we're just going to start. So it's a good idea to check in. Again, don't sit and talk too long. Just check in, say you're here, anything I need to know. Maybe if it's early in the year, there might be like a big puddle in right field. They'll let you know about that. So uh, that's usually a good idea to do something like that. And then you go back to your car and wait for your partner, or if you're by yourself, you just wait till, as Alan and I just said, until it's just about time to take the field. Okay, so you get to the game, or you go onto the field, and I'm going to zoom in. Now, this is just a Google map picture, so it's a little bit grainy, but here's just a couple of things on where you stand that I just want to point out. And some of these things, again, it seems silly, but I didn't know it until I didn't stand in the right place a few times early on. Okay, so when you do the plate meeting, of course, you're going to be right here, and the other coach is going to be here, and the other coach is going to be here. If you have a partner, if you like, let's say you're going to do a varsity game for the first time and you're not sure where to stand, whoever the base umpire is going to be right here. And then you go through the pregame meeting, and we'll talk about what goes into that pregame meeting in a few minutes. But the first thing you're going to do, you're going to greet both coaches, and your partner will also greet the coaches. They're going to give them, or they're going to give you their names. Of course, you want to remember their names. And then you're going to ask for the lineup of the home team. And always ask the home team first. It's just traditional protocol. Always do that. All right, so there's our pregame meeting. I'm going to come back to this slide in a little bit to talk about other places that you will stand. Let me just delete these. Things that I didn't know about back when I was just starting. But here's the pregame meeting. Now, first of all, let me know if anything gets covered up. But here's the NFHS rule that you do not have that plate meeting until both teams are back in their dugout, or they can be in the bullpen area too. All right, interesting to know that because you might have a freshman team where, they're still playing catch on the field. Well, according to NFHS, they're not allowed to do that. It's just the coaches and the umpire or umpires. Any thoughts on that, guys? Any any objection to following that strictly? Nope. Okay. All right. So now as far as the pregame meeting, this is just an acronym to help you remember what you're going to do in the pregame meeting. You go through the lineups, you give them the statement about equipment, which I'll show you in a moment. You go over the ground rules, and then you have a statement about sportsmanship, and the acronym is LEGS. So that helps you remember. Again, my first few years, sometimes I would mix it up, sometimes I would forget something. I actually wrote this down in I had a little notebook or a lineup card book, and I wrote this down and taped it on the inside of it so I would remember it the first times I was doing varsity games. So it's helpful to remember legs. All right, checking lineups. Now, there is a little bit, there's a little bit more to it than all of this, but generally this is what we're doing. You check to see if they're going to have 9 or 10 starters. Do you have the name of the player? Do you have the position? Do you have the numbers? Are the available substitutes on the lineup card? Now, of course, we know that substitutes by rule don't have to be listed at the bottom of the lineup card. And in fact, a kid from the JV team could come over and be a substitute at some point in a game. It's not required, but it's good to have. Hopefully it's on there. Varsity coaches usually will have all of their kids listed on the bottom. But again, there's not a requirement that the kid is listed on the lineup card. All right, then the one to really be careful with is the DH selection. Are they going to have a traditional DH, player DH, or just a straight 9? Everybody's batting. I know the player DH is the tricky one. And the trickiest part of it, I learned this last year when a coach did not know the rule. The main thing that that I had to remember was that you cannot have a courtesy runner for a player DH. So there was a coach, I'm not going to say who it was, but he replaced his pitcher, who was also the DH at first base in the first inning. And I said, "You're going to lose your DH." And I told him of this, and then he just put the pitcher back in. But uh, that's the tricky part there. So I would take a look at that rule, but you're going to check that, the DH. And then, of course, look at the key positions, the pitcher, catcher, designated hitter. And usually this is for the sake of the courtesy runner rules. You can only have a courtesy runner for the pitcher and the catcher. And a kid cannot be a courtesy runner for both the pitcher and the catcher. So take a look at those rules. So these are the four things that you mainly look for. Anything else, guys, that you might look for when you're doing the lineups? Feel free to unmute if you want to add something in, something like that you like to also say or check.
Yeah, I mean, it's a quick look. Just
Right.
make sure you're doing this stuff quickly. Like, don't. I'm just the plate meeting itself is it's your introduction, right? It's how it's going to show how you're gonna everything's clean and everything. It shows that you know what you're doing, right? You're showing it's your job. It's a little mini job interview, right? Especially if you
Yep.
don't know the coaches. But if you're stumbling and bumbling and trying to remember and do all the stuff, it's gonna get negative. I mean, if you still do a good job umpiring, like it's not gonna be the be all end all, but it's a get off on the wrong foot type thing, right? Uh,
Yep.
don't say too much and any of this stuff, right? It's very
Yep.
simple.
Yeah.
Lineups
It's
lineups
just,
don't. Yeah,
I'm
just
sorry, Adam. Go
yeah. So
ahead.
just confirm, like the lineup specifically. Just confirm, like you're confirming that what you're seeing is correct, right? And then that's and then move on there. But keep it simple, right?
Yeah. Yeah. All this is fast. You glance at it, you can see it's 9 or 10. You can see if the substitutes are there. Usually you ask them about the DH. All right, who's your DH? Just so they make sure, they confirm it with you. That's really the only thing you really even say to the coach. All right, where's your DH? Who's he DHing for? Or I don't have a DH, something like that. And then just check where the catcher and the pitcher are. So it does go very fast. It's like 5 seconds at the most. Yep. Okay. And then this one, of course, everybody should know. Just trying to move this to the middle. Are your players legally and properly equipped? And the key thing about this, everybody who's new, is you need to get an acknowledgement from both coaches. You have to see them nod their heads, or you have to hear them say yes. Because if they're not properly equipped and something happens, you're not at fault in any way. They verified with you that everything is legal. They're not using any illegal bats or devices or anything, because then if they do come up to bat with an illegal bat or something like that, they get the penalty right away because they told you everything their players are using are legal and proper. All right, any thoughts on that, anybody? All right, so
Would that
memorize.
be, sorry,
Oh,
would that be an automatic ejection or still they get a warning even after you set, is all the proper equipment, you know, after our little spill.
okay, yeah. Well, for instance, let's take an illegal bat, a bat that's not doesn't have the stamp on it. Well, if a batter walks into the batter's box, he's out. As soon as he gets in the batter's box with an illegal bat, he's out. And if he doesn't get into the batter's box, he's not out yet. So yeah, there's a penalty. It all depends on what it is that you're talking about, what the illegal thing is. But bats, I would say maybe would be the thing that is most illegal. There are penalties depending on what it is, but like for instance, um, if Alan, do you know this? If I know that there's a rule about the communication devices, and let's say that you can't have two-way communication, and let's say the catcher does have two-way. Uh, it's a warning, correct? And then the manager just has to take it, or not the manager, but the head coach just can't use it then.
I believe so. I'm not up on that, like blinking on it right now, but I'm pretty sure most of the equipment like violate most of those things are just warnings.
Yeah,
Warning, yeah, they're not, or just get rid of it, or like a helmet comes up that's cracked. It's like just go put it away. We years ago we had a guy that threw 3 or 4 players out because they had a came up with a cracked helmet, right?
no,
So it's really it's got to be egregious or it's got to be intentional. Like, so none of this stuff is, unless it repeatedly you tell them to put it away and stop and don't do it, and then they bring it back. Like, you're gonna go up the ejection line there, but none of the equipment and violation stuff it is an ejection. I don't know about the communication device, but I'm assuming it's a warning first. Most of
yeah,
them are in the Federation rule book.
right. Yeah, I really, I think the bat is the only one that the rule book says if you step in the batter's box with it and then it gets noticed, you're out. That's the only one I know of, really. Okay, so you have the plate meeting and you go over those things, the legs, Legs. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you, this is the sportsmanship comment. Now, you don't have to go through all of this, but if you see this little picture down here of Patrick Farber, he's a friend of mine, and he's the editor of Referee Magazine's baseball section, and he does videos called Umpire Classroom, which are very good, by the way. And he just wrote this up. This is kind of long. I don't know that I would go through all of this, but just this gives you an idea of what you might say. You know, you might just say the first line and, let's have a good game, everybody. We expect a good game and we're all going to work hard, something like that. But use the word sportsmanship. You are required to say it. So this is a nice little outline. And of course, are there any questions? Usually you ask the coach, both coaches, do you have any questions? And you also ask your your umpire or your partner, do you have any questions? Oh, and one part that I did not bring up yet is the ground rules, which is the G. Now, the ground rules, usually once you get past the equipment, are you legally and properly equipped? You say to the head coach, okay, coach, take us around. That's usually the phrase that guys will use. Take us around. And then the head coach will usually very quickly point out all the things around the field that, like, what's out of play, that bench over there is out of play. We're going to go move that thing before the game starts. Typically, he'll say something like, well, the netting above the dugout is still in play if a ball hits it, or it's not in play. So if you as an umpire have never been to a field and he goes too fast, tell him to slow down because you do need to know what's in play or out of play. And in some places it's tricky. Some places, you don't think something's out of play, but it is, or in play and isn't. So um, don't let them rush through that if you don't know the place that you're playing. That's really important because it could get you in trouble in the game. It could be an important part in the game where the ball hits something and you need to know if it's out of play or not. All right, any thoughts on that, anybody? All
One
right.
other one
Oh,
other
go
little
ahead.
thing. Yeah, one other little thing. You got to ask about if you have an AED and a trainer on site.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. You have to ask, is there a trainer on site? They'll usually say, oh, there he is over there sitting in the cart, or they'll say, he's over at the soccer field, but we have a walkie-talkie in case something happens. Usually, and then they'll say, there's an AED over there, uh, trainer's room over there. I think also, depending on what the weather is like, you might ask about lightning detectors if it's tricky, if there's something like that happening. You've got a storm coming in. All right.
But it could be, as you said before, there might be a slick spot in right field. That would be good at this situation to go, hey, visiting team, I don't know if you know it. We're going to be fair about this, but we got a little slick spot in right field. Everybody be aware.
Yep. Thanks, Bob. I agree. All that's important stuff. Helps you navigate the game.
Hey, Al,
Yeah.
going back to ground rules, if the head coach proposes something that really just doesn't make any sense, and if there's a much easier way as an umpire that you see would work better in the game, can you suggest or even propose something to the head coach, or is that sort of frowned upon?
Well, yeah, you can. The thing is that if both coaches agree to play the game under the circumstances that are presented with, then you're allowed to play the game. Like even if, I don't know, even if there were cows in right field that you had to avoid, if both, and you couldn't get them out, I mean, that's an exaggeration, but or if, all right, here's a good example. Where Rolling Meadows plays, there's a gate in right field that gets blown open all the time. And both coaches agree, every time I was there last year, both the coaches agreed that, all right, we're still going to play even though the latch on that fence doesn't stay and it gets blown open sometimes during a play. And we're going to just call that a ground rule double. So, the most important thing is to get the game in, let them play. All right. Any other observations on that? I think that's an important question.
Yeah, they're just a little like there is some things that they're not allowed to do, like extending the dugout towards the field or towards the home plate, like little things like that. You're not going to see that a lot. And if you're new and you're working a freshman game and they do it, like I don't know if you make a big deal out of it, right? It's kind of most of the time you can just go with the flow of what they're saying, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and I guess another just had for new guys, the fields that you're working on are the weirdest fields you'll have, and no fences on the lines, and they'll be the hardest ones to work. And then once you work your way up and work, varsity games, usually that field's a little bit nicer most of the time.
Yeah.
So know your out of play stuff. Like that's the biggest thing. And don't worry if they happen to do something that's not quite exactly right and you're not 100% sure. Just it's probably okay just to let it go and then move on. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a field, the freshman field that Hoffman uses, I think, has basically like a little league backstop. And the on deck hitters are so close to home plate that they actually go to the opposite side of the hitter or behind the hitter, just like you would in a little league game. So they go on the other side, and you would talk about that. You would say, yeah, that's okay. It's a safety thing because they're that close. Okay, so if anybody thinks of anything as we're going along here, certainly chime in. All right, so now here's some other ideas about placement, where you go and where you stand in certain circumstances during a game. This part's going to be fairly quick, and then I would like to get to the strike zone. Okay, so we already had where you have the pregame meeting. Now let's say you have a national anthem. Well, uh, officially, at least what I've seen in the NFHS, home plate umpire stands here, and first base umpire or your field umpire is over here. Sometimes guys will be like this and this. Again, this is for a national anthem. So either way is okay. Either like this and this, or this and this, or if they're announcing lineups. So either one is okay. Officially, just I did a little research on this to see if there was an official, and this is what they say is official. But again, you're not in trouble or anything if you're not standing in the right place. But sometimes not standing in the right place shows that you're not experienced. And that's where, your credibility gets questioned sometimes. So you want to avoid that. Okay, so national anthem happens and the team takes the field and the pitcher's going to warm up. You and the other umpire usually do a fist bump, and the base umpire runs down the line. You got to look out for the shortstop throwing the ball to the first baseman. And then you come around here, and generally, this is where you're going to stand in between innings in the grass. You definitely don't want to be over here by the fence. You don't want to be chatting with the first base coach. You might say hi to him, you might shake hands, but your place is probably right about here. Now, in the first inning, one thing I do like to do, just to get my ears ready for making that call at first, in the first inning, I might come over here and I like to listen to the pop of the first baseman's glove as I'm looking at first base, because of course that's the technique. You look at the base and you listen for the ball popping in the glove. And, it's a good idea to train your ears to do that. Does anybody else have a sort of an umpire warm up that you do that you think is helpful before the game starts? Okay. All right. Now the home plate umpire is going to be up the line just a little bit, maybe 10 or 15 feet. And you are counting the warm-up pitches. And also, you're ready to toss an extra ball to the catcher in case one goes by. That's going to save you time. You don't want the catcher running back to the backstop. One of the other players will go get that ball and give it to you. You just toss it to them. So you're ready for that, but you're counting the warm-up pitches. And counting warm-up pitches is important. In fact, you're in this place too whenever a new pitcher comes in and you're counting the warm-up pitches. You don't want him to have more than 5 if he's in between innings. You don't want him to have more than 8 if he's a new pitcher. Only 5 and 8. You let the catcher know when he has 2 more to go. I mean, usually the catcher knows, but not always. You say 2 more, guys. Second one down, something like that. But this is where you're standing. Again, if you're a new umpire, you might have, like, if you've done Little League, you might have like been over here and you're getting your water and then you're talking to the fans and they're asking you questions and they're talking about how the game's going. Don't get involved with the fans at all. I mean, if you have your water over here, get your water. If a fan says anything, nod your head or whatever, but I wouldn't even talk to them. And then go back over here. In fact, try to stay here or the other side the whole game. Try not to leave this whole area if possible. Now, the side that you're on is also, some guys like to be only on one side the whole game. I've seen major league umpires just be on one side. Sometimes you want to be on the side of the defensive team so you could watch the on deck hitters over here. Like maybe the first guy up in the inning gets too close and you want to make sure that he's not too close, tell him to go back to the on deck circle. So you might want to do that. Another thing you want to think about is like, let's say that there's a mound meeting. You want to try to stand opposite of where the coach is so that he can see you. You're in his vision so that, he knows you're paying attention to how long it's taking him. So that's always a good idea. Any observations, anybody? Alan, any thoughts on what side you might be on? Alan, what's your procedure for what side you're on in between innings?
I was always taught, and I've kind of stuck with it, that you go opposite of um the dugout that just came in to the plate. So you
Right.
stand in front of the empty dugout. At least I think so. Now I'm questioning that. It just you get your eyes on more people, right? And you try to go, and then all else fails, you go the opposite side of the dugout that's pissed off at you.
Yes. Yeah,
Get as
that's
far
always
away
good.
from Yeah,
That's
get away from there. Then like pitching changes you talked about a little bit too is
Mhm.
always opposite of opposite of where the coach is at. So if the coach is coming out of the first base dugout, you stay on the third base side. If he's coming out of the first base dugout, go so you're not crossing paths with him as he goes out there.
Yeah.
One, two, just to avoid most of the time when a coach is going to the mound, he's not happy, right? So you just don't want to, and he might not be happy at you. So these are just to create a little space there.
Yep. So if here's the coach, you're here, you might even come over here so he can see you. All right. Uh, any questions, anybody, on any of that? Main thing, stay around here. One other thing I wanted to say, and this is a college thing, college umpire thing, is that when a coach wants to make changes in college, they have to come up to the circle and tell you the changes. And the home plate umpire never leaves the circle if the coach comes out for a change. He has to come to you. Same thing with, let's say that a coach wants to question a play. They're not allowed to go onto the field. You might, like, let's say you're the second base umpire and the coach wants to come out and ask you about a play. At the college level, you meet like this, if everybody can see that. Now, high school, I don't think that they have instituted that rule, but it probably should be a rule, at least for umpires. You can ask the coaches to do that. I did that several times last year where I said, if you have a change, come up to me in the dirt circle. Okay. Again, any thoughts by anybody to add to that? All right. All right. So now for some fun things. Now, first, I just want to talk quickly about, as the home plate umpire, where you should be. And I think everybody probably has heard about the slot. Well, this is what the slot looks like. And especially pay attention to the foot placement. Now, the slot means that you are in the slot that's between the batter, who's over here, and the catcher here. Some guys like to be a little bit closer to the catcher's shoulder. Some guys are even a little bit further out to the left. But one of the keys is your feet, because if your feet are parallel, like straight across, your head is probably going to be further back a little bit. Now, when you have a lefty, you do just the opposite. This foot is a little bit forward, and your left foot is basically even with the catcher's, the middle of his back. Now, everybody, depending on what your body is able to do, what kind of health your back is in or your knees, certainly you can adjust that a little bit. But this is the ideal, is to be like this. I'm going to show some other pictures of other angles too. Here's a side view. This guy is pretty severe in his, it's almost a scissors, but you can see his foot is like pretty much even with the catcher, back foot over here. Now, I do think that this is a good picture also to talk about what you do with your hands. And I think everybody has something a little bit different. In my first year as a varsity umpire, I took one off my left hand, a foul ball. And ever since then, I tucked it under my thigh. This hand is pretty much protected by the catcher. So I was like, so having your hand here, I think is dangerous. But again, depending on your physicality, how you're feeling, you may need to stabilize yourself in some way. Sometimes later in the game, you're going to risk your hand because maybe you're tired and you just have to get your hand on your knee. But I would suggest the exposed hand goes underneath your thigh. You don't want to put your hand behind your back, or at least I suggest you don't put your hand behind your back because it kind of takes you off of balance. Any thoughts, anybody, on what you do with your hands before I move on to a little bit more with the slot? You could wear a hand guard too.
Yeah,
I've
just
seen guys do that.
don't put them behind your back.
Yeah.
Because you're actually exposing your shoulders. You're putting back, and you have a chance for injury there. It looks bad too. There's ways to do it where there's ways to do it so you lessen your chance of getting injured without doing the speed skating stance. So.
Yes. Speed skating stance, right.
Perfectly timely comment around that one.
Yep. And now here's the center field view of the slot. So you can see pretty much his nose is lined up with the inside corner. That's what I try to do, is line up my nose with the inside corner. And this is what you would call the slot area. Now, I will say though, if the batter is right on the inside of the batter's box and the catcher's sitting on the outside corner or something, the slot actually is a little bit different because what you're really trying to do is you're trying to be inside of the barrel of the bat when it makes contact and could be fouled back. So, all right, here's your strike zone. The bat's going to come through in here somewhere, probably. And if he fouls it back, it's going to go here. Now, if he's way inside, well, his bat probably is going to be here. So you might be safe right here. Again, mainly the slot has to do with the where the batter is, not really the catcher at all, but it's where the batter is. If the batter's way over here for some reason, I mean, you never see anybody that's way on the outside of the batter's box, but if you were right here, that might be a foul ball right in the face. I mean, again, I don't think I've ever seen that, but really it's the relation to the bat, not the catcher. That's what the slot is. Because most likely a ball is going to get fouled straight back or off away from the batter. Occasionally it will come back and hit you in the mask. Oops. Occasionally that will happen. Hopefully it won't, but that's what the slot is. Now, here's something that I learned when I was talking to, in the article that I was working on, when I was talking to the Major League umpires. You might see this on TV. They have been moving closer to the center of the plate and risking their lives or risking concussion. And I asked Jim Reynolds, he's the Major League umpire supervisor, why are they doing that? And they said, well, because now they're being evaluated on a precise strike zone and their livelihood depends on how they're being rated on that. He also said he would not suggest moving over the middle of the plate to anyone. But like for instance, you probably may have seen a YouTube video of an umpire that called a perfect game in the World Series. He got every strike and every ball correct according to the computer. And he was lined up right in the middle of home plate for the whole game. But again, even the major league umpires are saying, the supervisors don't do it. I guess if you're making 500,000 a year as an umpire, okay, fine. But if you're a high school umpire, stay in the slot. Guess it's up to you though. But I would stay in the slot.
Hey,
Okay.
Alan, I
Yes.
have a question. So, in the event the catcher does go so far outside, I mean, you're practically a sitting duck at that point. I mean, if he were to throw it wildly, right? I mean, hopefully he's going to
Right.
be close to the catcher.
Yeah.
So, do you move with the catcher? Because then at that point, you're obviously the barrel, the ball. You're going to be in a closer situation to that, or do you just hope to God the pitcher throws it to the catcher?
Yeah. I would not move behind the catcher. You do it in relation to the batter.
Okay.
Like you were saying, most likely the pitcher is aiming for the catcher, and surprisingly, catchers are good. I mean, again, if you're doing a freshman game, maybe not, but uh, stay to the inside of the barrel of the bat. Uh, because you're more of a sitting duck if you move out to the center of the plate.
Okay.
Yep. Just have to trust it.
Yep. You just it's a weird feeling when you're just standing down the middle of the plate by yourself, but
Yep.
I get it.
Yep.
I get it.
Yep. Um, okay, so before we go to a little bit more of the strike zone, I just wanted to say something about your indicator, especially for new guys. Now, this is the indicator I use. It only has, three things on it. You don't really need to have innings on it. You don't need to have score on it. You really only need these three. And this particular indicator only goes to strike one, strike two, and then zero, because you don't need strike three, because once you get to strike two, you go back to zero. I mean, once you get to strike three, you just go back to zero. And the ball counter goes one, ball two, ball three, but there's no ball four on it because you don't need that. And also outs, one and two, and then it goes back to zero. So that's an idea, but that's up to you. But here's the thing that, again, if you're new, that I think I would do that would make make you look better in your first game is practice moving the dials without looking just by watching, say, a YouTube game, or if there's a college game that's on, because college games are starting to come on, and WBC and spring training games will be on, and try to move your clicker without looking, because it makes you look better if you don't have to look at your clicker after every single pitch. It's okay to check it occasionally, but just practice with it so that your finger, it's almost like playing the piano with your clicker. You know where it's supposed to go. You know how hard you have to pull it. So I just wanted to throw that in. Just practice before, spend an hour watching a game and just call the balls and strikes with your clicker. Okay, so now I want to talk about how you think about the strike zone. Now this video I want to show you, it's a little bit grainy here, so hope you can endure it. But it shows how much catchers between 2015 and 2025 have started to yank the pitches back into the strike zone. Again, you can see, this is a video, I'll turn it on in a moment, but just this first frame, you can see this is JT Realmuto, both of them, both pictures. He used to yank it from here to here. Now he yanks it from here at the bottom right into the center. And that's a problem for us as umpires, which I'd like to talk about in a few minutes, but let's just watch a little bit of what catchers are doing. Watch them yank it. Notice they start with their glove on the ground now. All high school catchers are doing this now. They're taught to do it. In fact, I train catchers in the area and I teach them to do that because that's what major league catchers are doing, college catchers are doing, yanking it all the way to the center of the strike zone. Now, back when I was catching in college, I was told by the umpires, stick the strikes. Don't move your glove. If you move your glove, you're telling me it was a ball. Well, they're not trained to do that by their coaches or anybody. They're trained to yank it into the strike zone. Here's another. Oh, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I heard somebody. I think I turned on one, and which one is running? Oh, there we go. All right. I think I'm running. Oh, this is the one I'm running. Okay, there we go. Sorry, everybody. Okay, so this is just some more examples of catchers yanking balls into the strike zone. Even balls that are not strikes. Look at the ball was over here. It shows you, and it was called a strike. So it's hard for major league umpires. And I think the trickiest one is the high strike. Now, this is just one pitch, and this is also a little grainy, but watch what catchers do with the high strike. And this is one of the hardest ones to call. See if they show where that was. All right, let's go back. All right, so I'm just going to drag it so you can see slowly. catchers are trained to bring their glove up and then just flip it down. Watch what he does. Look how high that is. Way high. And then as soon as it hits his glove, boom, flicks it down. It's right at his belt. It's even below his belt. And it looks like it's right down the middle. And the high school catchers, especially the varsity ones, are great at it. Or at least the good ones are great at it. So, with that in mind, we want to think about how to call these pitches. Now, this example is from MLB The Show. I set up a little video here, and this is my catcher's glove, actually. I added this animation, you might call it, to this video. And listen to how I talk about what's happening here. Now, first I'm going to play it through. This is also set up with the camera of the video game right on basically the inside corner. So it's angled properly for being in the slot. So it's pretty close. Now, first thing, take a look at the strike zone. This is fairly accurate. Notice that the top of the strike zone, when he's standing up, is at his belt. But the strike zone rule, according to NFHS, is that it's the halfway point between essentially his shoulder and his belt when he is in his hitting position. When he's in his hitting position. So let's see what the hitting position looks like. I'm going to stop it. Okay, right. That's the hitting position. So then when the strike zone pops back up, I know the glove is in the way, but you can see here's the top of the strike zone. Now his strike zone is here. But when he's standing up, the strike zone is here. And that is what the rule, or at least that is what the rule was in Major League Baseball. It's actually more precise because they're going to use a computer strike zone for appeals. And if you want to know what that is, it's a little bit more complicated, but for us, essentially our strike zone is about right here. This is where we want to call it. And generally, I will call strikes, at least at the varsity level, just above the belt. Any higher than that, I usually don't call it a strike. If you're a freshman umpire, you might go a little bit higher. But generally, right about the belt or a little bit above it. Okay. Everybody else, if you have some opinions on, where the top of your strike zone is, we can talk about that in a few minutes. But I wanted to point out something else. Okay, so as this pitch is coming in, or before the pitch comes in, before you even start your season, you want to think about how you're going to visualize your strike zone. Where is it going to be, and how are you going to call these pitches? Now, I think this video game gives you an idea about when you make your call, at least in your head. Okay, so here's the pitch. It's about to be caught by the catcher. Look where it is. It's too high. It's not a strike. But it's not in the catcher's glove yet. Now, typically, when you're taught to call balls and strikes, you're told, watch it into the catcher's glove, pause, take your time, you might say what your call is in your head before you say it out loud. You might say to yourself, strike, and then call it out loud, strike, or whatever your call is. But what the best umpires do, and I learned this by doing these interviews with major league umpires and college umpires and high school umpires, what they really do is they take a picture in their brain, in their mind, of this exact spot before it hits the catcher's glove. They see that spot, they let it hit the glove, but in the time that they're pausing, they're looking at this particular picture. And every guy that I talk to, and some women also that are college umpires, they said the same thing generally. I think, Alan, you said to me that you take a snapshot right about this spot. Other guys said that they see several frames of a film and they pick the correct frame that comes to them before it hits the catcher's glove. So when they say to you, pause after it hits the catcher's glove before you call the pitch, what excellent umpires are really doing is they're seeing that spot right there. Whether you consciously are doing that or not, if you're good at calling the plate, that's what you're doing. Now, again, watch what happens here. It hits the glove, and then instantly he yanks it down. But look, that's where the ball actually came in. And then this is where the catcher yanks it down to. But you have to see this. You can't just look at the catcher's glove and say, oh, his glove is in the strike zone. That must be a strike. You have to see this snapshot. Okay, so I'd like to ask again, especially you guys who are veterans, how do you handle that pause? Do you have a way of thinking about this position right here in the pitch? Go ahead and unmute somebody. Nope, all right, it's okay, you don't have to. But if you want to chime in, I'd be interested in knowing how do you think about that spot just before it hits the catcher's glove? Because when it hits the glove, boom, it's down there. Okay, so let's take a look at this from the lefty side. Now, this is going to be a pitch that's outside, and watch what the catcher does with the outside pitch. Look, way outside, but they flip the glove up and then inch it over just a little, and now it looks like it's on the outside corner. So they try to catch it with the thumb down. That's what the best catchers are trained to do. Thumb down, so they can flip it, and now the edge of their glove is on the edge of the outside corner, and then they're going to move it over a little bit, maybe just a little bit more, hoping to get your strike. I'll just take a look at that one more time for the fun of it. That's what happens. The low strike, I don't have one for the low strike, but essentially it's the same thing, is they'll come up from the bottom, they'll catch it in this thumb down manner, and then they'll flip it up, but just from the bottom of the strike zone. And it's tricky. So again, you have to see this right here and make your call on that, not on where the glove is. And it happens in less than a second. The best catchers are super fast. Okay, so any thoughts on that? we're getting past 8 o'clock, and that's most of what I wanted to show
Some of
you.
it comes with confidence in your strike zone. I mean, yeah, a new guy, but
Mhm.
if you have confidence in your strike zone, um, I don't know how to say it, but it's all in confidence. You have to be confident with yourself. I feel if your catcher is going to move his glove, you're in trouble because one or two coaches are going to be screaming at you at that point because you're going to. And I'm a little quick strike is what they're telling me. I call a little too quick. I could take a split second and hold on a little bit, but on the other hand, I'm kind of confident. I'm very confident, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So I'm trying not to be quick because it could possibly get me in trouble a lot of times. So a lot of guys that I've umpired with, they're like, you need to slow a split second down.
Mhm. Yeah, and it
Um,
is only a split second. When they say
right.
you're too quick, it's like a half a second too quick. Uh,
Yeah, and I don't know. I just say it's my confidence level. I'm confident of where it is, so it kind of speed it up a little bit. Um,
yeah. Well, of course, there's a lot to it. In fact, when we go to a clinic, when we can physically, if anybody here goes to either of the clinics, you'll get a chance to certainly do more than just these pictures that I'm showing you, to think about how to call pitches and timing. We're hopefully we will practice timing. And again, um, think about what I showed you there, that again, if you're too fast, sometimes you miss the movement on a pitch, like especially you have some varsity pitchers that are throwing in the mid 80s with good movement. And if you miss that movement because it looked like it was outside and then it cut into the strike zone, but you've already made up your mind, uh, it's a problem. So, but certainly slowing down just a little bit allows you to even be more confident in it. Another thing I think all of you would agree with is that keeping your head still and just using your eyes instead of moving your head is, of course, vitally important. And that's another thing at the clinic. I think everybody just gets back into practice when we get to practice that at the clinics, is just keeping your head still and not moving it too soon. Like sometimes if you're quick on your call, you tend to come out of your crouch before you should. Even before the ball gets to the catcher's glove, guys who are really quick start moving up to call the strike before the catcher even catches it. And you might be moving just by like 6 inches or even 5 inches, but sometimes you miss a vital movement. So it's worth thinking about as you're moving into the season. And the clinic helps with that. Um,
mhm.
and any other thoughts, guys?
One question. How often do you announce the count?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. Well, what I've been taught is the basic rule is the third pitch, whatever the third pitch is, and then any count that could end the at bat on the next pitch. So you would say 3-0 because the next pitch could be a ball four, or 1-2 because the next pitch could be strike three. Now, if a guy keeps fouling the ball off, you don't have to keep saying, "Oh, it's 1-2. Oh, it's 1-2. Oh, it's 1-2," right? On the other hand, if they're like 7 or 8 foul balls, which happens sometimes, sometimes people forget what the count was, right? And then you run out of baseballs, and like anytime you run out of baseballs, and you got to pause the game for a minute because they have to find the baseballs, and someone has to go run in the forest preserve to get one, then it's usually a good idea to let them know what the count is again. So that's a good rule of thumb.
Are you announcing it just to the batter and the hitter, or are you
Pit-
also loud
Pitch.
enough so the third base coach hears it?
You're just showing it to the pitcher.
Okay.
That's your rule. And you're going to say it out loud, and you're going to use your left hand for your balls and your right hand for your strikes. Never change that. And you're going to say two balls and two strikes. Don't say two and two. You just want to be as clear as possible. Three balls, one strike. No balls, one strike. If it's a full count, don't say full and don't show a fist. Show three balls, two strikes. And you're only showing the pitcher. He might not even be paying attention to you, but show the pitcher. You don't have to move around and show the third base coach and the first base coach unless they ask you. If they
Okay.
ask you, then you can. All right, that's a good question. Okay, I want to show you one more thing, but we have about 10 minutes. Anything else on the strike zone or questions?
I was gonna ask you like the high strike that you're saying like just above like the belt or the belly button, whatever. What about they say at the letters? Is that like that's gonna be like pretty high, right?
Yeah,
At the
yeah,
letters?
yeah. I don't, well, at the varsity level, you would not call it at the letters.
Okay,
Freshman level, I probably
maybe.
would. Because, well,
Gotcha.
wait, if you're going to do a freshman game, just wait to see what your pitchers are like. If they're really
Sure.
good, maybe hold them to a varsity standard, but you know, I think another
Yeah.
rule of thumb at the under level, it would be call strike one as soon as possible. Like even if it's off the plate or a little bit high, call strike one because that makes the batter think, oh, I got to swing.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So
Yeah,
but the knees are always right around the knees, and okay, it pretty much stay consistent. I mean, you
yeah.
can make an adjustment, right? As long,
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, because one year I was I was doing the home plate for the first time, and the veteran I was doing the field. He was saying you're slightly high, on your calls. So
Mhm.
I made an adjustment, not too obvious, but that's usually a good thing to do sometimes, right? If your
Yeah.
partner says that you're too off. Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Definitely. In fact, here's another thing that when I was talking to the MLB umpire supervisor, he said 20 years ago, the motto was be consistent in your balls and strikes calls. He said now the motto is be consistently good. Now, again, they're being evaluated by a computer. So you know if they're good or bad. You can even look up their percentages now. Whereas no one's going to know if our strike zone was really good or bad officially. No, unless there's a video of it, and there's probably not going to be, unless you're doing a state championship or something. Some schools videotape all their games, but they're still, if they have a center field camera, it's probably going to be off on an angle, and so no one's going to know. So you have to evaluate yourself. Another thing that I learned from the umpires that I interviewed was that they do pay attention to the reactions to their calls. So if your catchers are going, on pitches that you're not calling strikes and both sides are doing it, probably you're off a little bit. So listen
Mhm.
to them. Batters usually you don't want to listen to because they're just If they make an out, or if you call strikes three on them, they're going to say that was the ball, even if it was right down the middle sometimes. So listen to your catchers, uh, and that helps you out, and
Thank you.
your partner, I would say. Anybody else with an observation or a question?
Just a
I mean,
question.
sometimes that would be a game management thing, correct? I mean, if you're going to be really tight, you might be out there a long time, you know?
Right. Yeah.
As you said, a good get that first strike.
Yep.
That'll wake them up going, okay,
I
we
have
got to
to.
swing the bat here. Because
That's
game
right.
management, you could be out there a long time if your strike zone is really, really, tight.
Yep.
Very
You
true.
might want to widen it out a little bit or something to get the game going a little more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
That's always true. Little league all the way through,
Right.
until you get evaluated by a computer.
You're right.
Yeah.
You had talked about where to stand.
Oh,
How
yeah.
about taking a few pitches behind the plate in the first inning to get a look at the pitcher?
Okay, you're right.
Guy's got a good curveball, or
Yeah, I did.
um,
I didn't cover that part. So, but let's talk about it really quickly. In the first inning, and this is an area where Alan said something to me when I was interviewing him for that article. In the first inning, like what I usually do is I'll let the pitcher throw two pitches. He gets eight, remember.
right,
First two pitches, let him throw so he can find the strike zone, And then I get behind the plate on the left side, so for a right-handed batter. And the first thing I do, and this is what Alan said he does too, I just look at where the pitch is going to come from in the environment. Like, where's his hand going to be when he releases it? Are there going to be trees behind it? Is it going to be a white building? Is it going to be a nice black background? Just get an idea of where the pitches are going to come from. So you do that on two pitches, and then you go to the other side, like where a lefty would be, and see where the hand comes out of that one. Uh, Pay attention also to, the pitcher's wind up and so forth. And then the last two pitches, I usually leave and I say, as I'm leaving from behind the plate, I say, take the second one down, catch. And then I go over to the side, where I showed you before.
right.
So yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. I
Thank
would
you.
always do that in the first inning.
Yeah,
And some guys do it for both teams. I usually do it for both teams. Some guys do it just for the first, the home pitcher. But most guys do it for both teams, actually. Yeah, I'm glad you asked that.
thank you. Hey, what about I got to order plate shoes. What website do you use for that one?
Well,
Officials, I don't think has had them.
well, there's lots of websites. Attire is where I get a lot of my stuff.
Okay,
Attire, and but there are a lot of different places. I just bought the Mizuno plate shoes. They're really comfortable. They're kind of expensive, but they're great, soft and nice grip. I used them once in the fall,
okay,
and that was it because I bought them in the fall. Definitely, if you're new, you got to have plate shoes.
right.
Don't tr- don't try it with gym shoes, or else you're going to lose your toes.
That would not be good.
Probably on the first pitch.
That would not be good.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, I just want to show you one thing very quickly. This is kind of entertaining and funny. All right, and I'm going to kind of zip through this, but do some counting. All right, so here comes a guy, or so the thing that happens here is a kid gets hit by a pitch. All right, you'll see it. Okay, hit by the pitch. All right, now the coach is going to come and remove the pitcher. There's no injury. He's just going to remove the pitcher. Now, that's important to remember. There's no injury of the pitcher. No trainer comes out. Nobody says to the umpire, we have an injury here and we have to bring in somebody because of an injury. Okay, so pay attention and count. Now I'm going to move ahead just a little bit because there's a lot of rigmarole that goes on here for a few minutes. Okay, now the plate umpire is standing where he should be. The base umpire, I don't know, he's talking to a player, and I mean, it's not terrible. Okay, now we got a new pitcher. Coach comes out 2 times. Okay, now here's the new pitcher. Now I'm going to set this to 3 times the speed. Just count. Oh wait, he has an all right, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. You got 13 warm-up pitches. You only are supposed to get 8. And in fact, and I got this from Patrick Farber, who's the guy from Referee Magazine. He sent this to me. They actually protested the game because he was not supposed to get more than 8. This was in Georgia. That was a game last week that happened. It's like 70 degrees, but let's see where the umpires are when all of this is going on. Okay, so there he is. Here's the home plate umpire having a conversation with the batter. Okay, still talking to the batter. All right, still having a conversation with the batter.
It's quite a party at second base.
Yeah, there is quite a party at second base. And now the base umpire's watching the pitcher. I mean, he should be counting. So anyway, this is a good example of you need to count. And if the home plate umpire is talking to the coach for some reason, the base umpire should help him out. So for instance, let's say the kid gets to 6 pitches. Remember, he only gets 8. You as the base umpire should either signal to the plate umpire he's got 2 more, like say he's got 6 and he gets 2 more, signal that he's got 2, like hold up 2, or you just have to stop him. Like if the plate umpire is still having a conversation with the batter, you just got to stop him and say, that's it. Okay, well, thanks for watching that entertaining piece. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. All right,
Yeah.
so Alan, thanks for inviting me to speak today. I hope everybody got something out of it. There's a lot to working the plate that you really have to do physically, but hopefully this just gets your mind working just a little bit to think about where your strike zone is. And for you guys who are newer, I think hopefully you learned something about the pre-game things that, again, it took me almost a whole season to know I was supposed to do it until some of the guys who are on this call told me to do it. Like I still remember somebody telling me, you're not supposed to stand by the fence in between innings. Go stand right here. And he brought me there. He said, this is where you stand, right in front of the other coach. So he knew I was a rookie, basically, but I never forgot it. All right, Alan, back to you.